When I was scanning the restaurant looking for a client to meet, I spotted my ex-wife, Susan. She was sitting with a slightly overweight middle-aged man. You could tell that he might have been in good shape before, but good food and time had taken a toll on his physique. Susan was sitting right next to him, and you could see that she was content with everything. Everything about him exuded wealth. As I stood in the lobby and observed, a wave of memories flooded over me. It had been 3 years since we divorced, yet the emotions resurfaced as if it were just yesterday. That was how I arrived at the place I am today, looking in instead of sitting beside her. However, as you'll see, her wishes came true. My troubles began when I had to go to Albany to meet a client. I decided to stay overnight to avoid a long drive back. Just an hour into the journey, the client called and said his car door was broken, but he was fine. He apologized for canceling the late appointment, and I said it was no problem. We could reschedule the meeting. After all, I really wasn't ready for another 2 hours of driving. I told him I would try my best to get back home for a romantic dinner with my beloved wife. I wanted to surprise her. An hour and a half later, I finally drove along my path. The first thing I noticed was 3 unfamiliar cars parked in the driveway. My wife often invited her friends over when I was away to keep herself company, so it wasn't a big deal for me. I parked on the street and entered the house, thinking everything was fine. The first thing I realized was a mistake when I saw 4 sets of clothes on the living room floor. I stood still as I heard my wife scream. It wasn't a cry for help, but a lustful, "fuck me harder" scream, a sound I knew well. My heart sank, and I realized that my wife was having sex with someone else. My whole world shattered. I didn't want to go upstairs, but I knew I had to. As I reached the top of the stairs, I heard my wife making lascivious sounds. I silently peeked into the bedroom and saw 3 men, 2 of whom I didn't know, but the third one was her boss from the company, Jeff Davis, and they were all with my wife at the same time. I never liked Jeff, and now I knew why. "Susan, you're amazing. I love you, and thank you for helping me with my 2 favorite clients." I could sense their admiration for her lascivious body, just as she enjoyed using it. Jeff praised her. This deceiver was using my wife as a tool to promote his business clients. All 3 of them began treating my wife like their personal sex toy. They offered her everything they had and called her all kinds of derogatory names. It seemed like she became wilder with this treatment, and they encouraged her even more. I had never seen her behave like this in the 10 years of our marriage, although I felt that Jeff choosing the name whore for her was the most fitting. I quietly withdrew, but they were too busy to notice me. Silently, I went down and into my office. I found my digital video camera with some remaining battery and an old holiday cassette tape with some empty space. I didn't want to make a film. I just wanted to capture my wife's actions as evidence for my lawyer. Quietly returning to the bedroom, I started recording. I captured good footage of my wife's face as well as everyone else. I only recorded 5 to 10 minutes because that's all I could bear. Now, some men might find this sexy and exhilarating, but not for me. This scene made me sad, weak, and betrayed, seeing my wife turned into a whore for other men. It was almost unbearable for me, and I went downstairs to calm down and think straight. I entered the office and took the gun out of the safe, removing the safety. I'm not a violent person, but I just wanted to fire a few shots if they acted foolishly. Then, I went into the living room and took all the car keys and wallets from the clothes the men left on my living room floor. I went outside and slashed their tires, including Sue's car. When I returned to the house, I had a grin on my face that even the Grinch would envy. I started devising a brilliant plan, and I knew it would succeed. If Sue brought her mobile phone with her, I had seen it on the bedside table in the bedroom while I was recording the video. I had prepared the camera and went to the back of the stairs, quickly dialing Sue's mobile number. It rang a few times, and I placed the phone on her answering machine. She knew I would call at this time, so I called back every 2 minutes until she finally answered. Perhaps she had instructed them to remain silent, as they could hear a pin drop in the house. "Hey Bobby, how's Albany?" Sue asked with heavy breathing. I could also hear the faint laughter of the men in the room. "You sound a bit out of breath. Are you okay?" I asked her with feigned concern in my voice. "Yes, honey. I had to run up the stairs to get the call on my mobile phone." She quickly covered herself. "Oh, the meeting with the client got canceled, and you'll be home in just a few minutes." I wondered if she wanted to go out for dinner. I asked her in a casual tone. Inside, I was more furious than ever in my life. "Are you coming home now?" she asked with a worried voice. "Sounds great. Just finishing up. See you in a bit." She quickly said everything and hung up before I could respond. I chuckled to myself because I knew what would happen in just a minute. And as I thought, 4 completely naked men started descending the stairs into my living room. All men were record-breaking in terms of undressing time, and Sue also put on clothes and tidied herself up. All the men rushed out of the house, and Sue also grabbed a few pairs of shoes and a coat. She went to the door and looked outside, hoping they would leave before she stepped out. If she wasn't too excited, she would have noticed my car parked on our street. All the men started shouting something simultaneously, and she went out to the porch to hear what they were saying. At that moment, I slammed the front door shut and locked it behind her. My wife only managed to see my face as I was closing the door, and she tried to peer through the side window to talk to me with a pleading voice. "No more room for discussion," I said as all the men returned to my porch and started banging on the front door. In a few minutes, I knew they wanted to retrieve their wallets and keys. I called 911 and reported an attempted break-in at my house. The dispatcher said one of my neighbors had just called her. I stated my name and address. Only 2 minutes later, a police officer appeared at my front door. I waited until the officer questioned my wife. Then I opened the door and went out to meet the 2 police officers on the scene. "These men assaulted my wife, and I want them all arrested," I told the police. This prompted an immediate reaction from everyone. All the men immediately shouted, "I was invited. She wanted it. I didn't assault anyone. And she wanted it from all of us, including me." Everyone looked at Sue, waiting for her response. She lowered her eyes and avoided my gaze. In a soft, shameful voice, she said, "I invited these men into my house, had consensual sex with them, and no one assaulted me. I did this entirely willingly." All the men sighed in relief as they knew they weren't facing a rape accusation. At this moment, 2 more police cars arrived, responding to my request. They wrote down everyone's names in their report. Then the police told me, "If your wife invited these men to your house, and they are all over 18, then we don't have much chance to assist you. I suggest you learn, or something," he said, looking at my wife as if she were just a piece of trash on his shoe. I told the police to call a taxi and that Mrs. Thomas wouldn't be allowed back into the house that night. One of the men in the group called a taxi because he discovered that all their tires were slashed. They also tried to accuse me of taking their wallets and keys, but I told the police that I didn't understand what they were saying. I turned back and stepped onto the porch. Sue stayed with them until the taxi arrived. I just stood on the porch and watched lightning bolts shoot out of my eyes. My wife tried to come to the porch to talk to me, which was a brave move at that moment. If she knew I was angry and that I had a gun, she might have run in the opposite direction. "Bobby, I'm so sorry," she tried to say something, but I immediately cut her off. "You shattered my heart, and I will never forgive you. Jeff called you a whore, and I think that's right. From now on, I'll call you a whore and will never use your real name again. If you need to talk to me again, do it through Ted." With that final remark, I walked into the house and locked the door, leaving her standing there. She ran back to the group, crying, and Jeff tried to hug her, but she pushed him away. This made me feel a bit more comfortable. My good mood quickly evaporated as I returned to the bedroom. The room was filled with the smell of sex. For some reason, this made me furious, and I started smashing up the entire room. I grabbed the mattress and threw it down the hill. I went to the garage and got my toolbox, started dismantling the bed, and threw each piece down the hill, along with the mattress. I returned to the bedroom and picked up Sue's mobile phone from the floor. I checked her contacts and messages. Of course, she had some nasty emails, pictures, and even some videos with men I had never known, having sex with her everywhere. However, based on the photos, she knew them well. I started looking for garbage bags to throw all her clothes into, and I had to laugh at myself. I used to care about her so much. But those days were gone. I brought down all the boxes from the bedroom and stacked the contents of each box into a separate pile on the hill. Then, I got rid of all her excess stuff in the living room. This was where I got the next surprise. I moved all the dresser drawers from the living room out to the hill, similar to what I did with the stuff in Sue's bedroom. The last drawer at the bottom got stuck and wouldn't open fully. I wasn't in a good mood, so I used my anger on the dresser drawer. I yanked hard and heard the sound of plastic breaking. I pulled the drawer out and tried to open it slowly. It opened immediately, and I could see the cause of the problem. Under the drawer were 7 or 8 DVD discs. I smashed one of the plastic cases, but the disc was still in good condition. My heart sank again as I looked at the discs. I didn't think I could feel worse, but I did. Going down the stairs, I read the titles on the discs, and it didn't make me happy. I went to the living room and placed everything on the shelf for examination. First was Sue and her closest friend, Sarah, at Sarah's house. Sue helped at Avon parties every Tuesday and Thursday. I thought they actually had sex with some men at her house within a few hours. Sue and Sarah had sex in various ways, with multiple partners. I started crying, but stopped when I saw the last 2 discs. The first disc depicted how Sue had her own tennis tutor during the lessons I paid for. She went there every Saturday and always came back too tired for intimacy on those Saturday nights. Now I truly knew why. The second disc showed Sue having sex at her workplace, on the conference table with Jeff, her boss, and Jeff's high-ranking boss, Bill Evans. Bill is an important figure in the community, and his image often appears in the newspapers at some event. I watched as he carried out charity work on the privacy of my wife. I took out a large envelope and put in a mobile phone, the discs, and a tape I recorded earlier. My plan was to hand the entire envelope to my lawyer and close friend Ted Worth. We've been friends since I can remember, and he's one of the only 2 people in the world I truly trust. Nothing else mattered anymore. I looked at Sue's computer on the desk and pressed the space bar, waking it up. I copied everything from her computer, all files, emails, photos, and videos. It took about an hour to copy everything over, and then I sat down and started reviewing my wife's computer. There were videos of her having sex, just like on the discs I found. I found images of her that could only be seen on adult websites. Then I started reading her emails for the past 6 months. She tried to hide them under the file names of some silly programs, but I found them. She had many letters from Jeff and some other men. The rest were between her and Sarah. They were only written a few days ago when I read one of the letters, almost making me die. I thought about using the gun, but realized she wasn't worth it. I have to be strong. Only one email made me so angry, and it's from Sue to Sarah. Sarah asked her why she doesn't leave me and go back to being single. She also asked Sue to describe perfectly what she wants in a future husband. Here's her answer. Sarah, I don't want to do anything with him anymore. Body is loyal but foolish. I feel like it's only a matter of time before he discovers my secret lifestyle. He's not completely foolish, just blindly in love. He's gained a bit of weight recently, and his belly is getting bigger every day. It's sometimes hard to feel moved by him when compared to the guys we have. I also hate his beard and mustache. It makes him look, I don't know, kind of repulsive, I guess. I did genuinely love him for a while, but the excitement of the past years is too great to give up. His best friend is a lawyer, and if he interferes, it could be troublesome. Jeff and Bill from work hinted at promotions and salary increases, also including an increase in their pants. I laugh. I also want at least a house and a car. If I play my cards right, I might also get some financial support each month. I'm looking forward to the party on Tuesday. I'll be there if I can still walk after my tennis injury. I laugh. Oh God, Tony is really a machine, making sure I receive the video from last Thursday. That was the first time I worked out with multiple guys at once. For the man of my dreams, I want him to be wealthy, loyal, easy to manage, and a bit foolish. He has to kiss my ass whenever I want, and still ask how. I laugh. I don't care about the bedroom, as long as it's not lacking money. I laugh. I can get everything I need elsewhere outside the house. Sometimes it seems too easy. Dan, Bobby is home now. I have to go. See you on Tuesday. Call me Sue, bestie. I've read this letter many times, almost to the point where I could recite it by heart. The words repulsive and the past years truly hurt me more than any words could express. Is this how she truly thinks of me? Have I been blind in love to the extent that she has been cheating on me for over 2 years? Right after that, I went to sleep and slept on the couch. I didn't sleep well, and mostly just tossed and turned. The next morning, I woke up early. I called Ted Worth, my close friend. Mary answered, and she's Ted's secretary. I've known her almost as long as Ted. That morning, I requested an emergency meeting, and she said he'd be in court all day. Mary, tell Ted to meet me in an hour at his office. If he bothers you with some unpleasant words, mention the name Tammy Brown. This should catch his attention. See you in an hour. I told her and hung up before she could respond. I began to dress, and then my cell phone rang. I looked at the number because I didn't want to talk to Sue at all. It was an unfamiliar number, so I answered to see if it was Ted calling back from somewhere. Hello, Mr. Thomas. This is Bill Evans from Susan's office. If possible, I'd like to discuss with you the trouble that occurred last night at your house. If you find it appropriate, you could meet me today at my office to clarify the situation for everyone involved. I wasn't sure if he knew about the video I have of him and my wife at his workplace, but I knew he was concerned about the 2 important clients of Jeff Davis along with my wife, and Jeff was valuable to him as an employee. I also knew he was worried about the negative impact on his company and himself. Mr. Evans, I have an important meeting this morning, but I promise to call you back at this number before noon to arrange something for today. I assured him calmly, my tone as if he were suggesting something creative to me. Oh God, he's in for a big surprise. As I stepped out the door, I could still see a peculiar-looking yard sale with a broken bed, and all of Sue's clothes were still there. One of my elderly neighbors waved and had a humorous expression on his face. I knew I would become the hot topic for about 9 days, as they say in the news industry. It's a suburban area. I headed to the city center and grabbed a quick bite to eat. I ate some food quickly and went straight to Ted's office. Mary prepared a cup of coffee for me, lots of cream and no sugar. We've known each other for a long time. Oh, Bobby, I don't know what you brought for Ted, but I mentioned his name, and he canceled all appointments for today. If you want, you can say I need a month off, and if you want to tell me who Tammy Brown is, she added jokingly, you'll have to ask Ted. By the way, where is he? I asked her. He said he'll be right here. He needs to reschedule a meeting with the judge for today's court session, she told me. Right then, he walked in. Oh God, Bobby, Tammy Brown, you're surely in big trouble when mentioning that name to me. Go into the office and let's talk. Mary, don't connect me with anyone right now. He said all this very quickly. I brought my coffee and he closed the door so we could talk. I told him about the events of the previous night and what I knew about Sue's new lifestyle. Then I handed him an envelope filled with everything I had collected. And finally, he spoke. He listened to my story and never interrupted. I could see the legal wheels turning in his head as he recalled the events of the previous night. I also informed him about Bill Evans' request for a meeting today. Hello, body, as they often say. The most important task must be addressed first. I've known you for a long time and know you're going through a lot. Is there any chance for reconciliation between you and Sue? He asked me. Ted, if we talk about Katie, your wife, and you see those videos and read those emails, you'd drop her instantly. I want a divorce, but I also want to inflict serious harm. I won't silently endure in the dark. I admitted to him. Okay, first, we'll sue Tony and Ace Tennis Club, avoiding any interference with Sarah, as she's just a good friend playing with Sue. Sue's company is a completely different matter. Second, my plan is to sue the 2 clients who were at your home along with their company. We'll also go after Jeff Davis, Bill Evans, and their associates. It may get worse before it gets better, Bobby, Ted said. I don't care, even if I have to stand in the street and use my fists. I'll make these people pay for hurting me through Sue, I said with anger in my tone. All right, Bobby, tell me what Bill Evans wants, and we'll go from there, Ted said. We discussed various options, and I favored the last option the most, a direct assault on Sue's company. I have powerful leverage with the video of Davis, Evans, and Sue in their boardroom. Ted told me that as Sue's boss, they control her position, and this could lead to serious jail time. I like the sound of that. Ted also suggested that when Bill Evans knows we have something on him, his attitude will change, and they might propose some amount to me. I told him if it's less than $2 million, he can shake my hand. I'll let you know, Ted, $2.5 million. I've seen your legal fees before, I said with a smile. Come to my house tonight at 7 p.m., and Katie will cook us a good dinner. You need a moment of rest from home, I requested. You're demanding too much, Bobby. Give Bill Evans' phone number, and I'll schedule a meeting for 8 p.m. right after that. Right after that, Mary appears. Ted, they're calling you from line 1, she said. Mary, I told you I don't want to answer the phone, he said, getting angry. Sorry, Ted, but it's Susan. She wants to talk to you, and I thought you might want to answer, Mary continued. Sorry, Mary, it's going to be a long day, and it's just beginning. Does she know Bobby is here? He asked her. No information about that as far as I know, Ted, she replied. Let her know I'll talk to her in a while, he said more gently as Mary quickly left the room to the waiting area. I bet she found out that her cell phone, computer, and all her DVD discs are missing. I guess she must be furious because I dumped all her stuff in front of the yard along with our bed. I told him, wow, you really had a lively evening. Let me talk, and don't interrupt the conversation. As your lawyer, I need to clarify some things right now. He agreed with me and emphasized the connection. I started listening to a one-sided conversation, but I could almost understand what she was saying to Ted without hearing every word. Hello, Susan. This is Ted. Yes, I've talked to him. Bobby is a great guy and a friend of mine. I think, among all people, you would be the one to protect him and not stab him in the back like this. No, Sue, I don't want to talk to you. Right, I will represent him. He has very strong reasons. Do you know it won't be easy, right? I'll talk to him, but you've harmed someone loyal and loved you to death. I think he doesn't care much about your opinion. My best advice is to find a good lawyer for yourself. You'll need one. Yes, Bill Evans has scheduled a meeting at 2 p.m. However, I don't think you should be there. Listen to me, Sue. If you just appear at the door and listen through the glass, I'll tell Bobby to leave, and everything will turn chaotic. It's best to wait until everything is resolved and control yourself today. I know we put your stuff outside, but just like you could invite strangers into your bedroom, he can throw your stuff out of the house and onto the front yard. Actually, I'm surprised he didn't shoot someone last night. Oh, right, he stayed with his friend. However, for self-defense purposes, remember that he thought you were raped. This was clearly stated in the police report. I don't know, but if that were my Katie, she'd be in jail right now. I think he was hot-headed under these circumstances. As for the computer and mobile phone, as well as anything else not in the house this morning. You'll have to ask another homeowner. Maybe he left it all on the lawn with your clothes, and someone took everything. I really can't say. I've completed all the transfer documents for the house, and both have equal rights inside. How she chooses to exercise these rights is up to each person. All right, I'll let him know right now. I'll suggest she stays there and lets Bobby live in the house until everything is settled. I don't think it's safe for her to be in the same house with him right now. Listen, Sue, even now, I still want to punch you in the face, so don't push it. Stay with Sarah, and I'll get in touch. Make sure your lawyer calls me when you have one. Tears won't help you now, Sue. Besides being his lawyer, I'm also his friend. Your tears fall on deaf ears. I can become a ruthless man whenever I want, and this seems like the perfect situation. I've always liked and respected you until today. I apologize that you'll see a side of me that only enemies and those who want to harm me see. You won't like it, okay? But stay away from him and don't leave your office right now. He doesn't want any involvement with you. Goodbye, Ted concludes and looks at me. I guess you heard most of the conversation. He asks me with a melancholic look. Yes, I just wish I could see her one more time and let her know my true feelings, although I don't think I want to go through the pain of seeing her again, at least not right now. I confess to my friend. What should I say, Ted? He asks me immediately, changing his mood from negative to optimistic. Do two things for me, he requests me, and immediately changes his mood from negative to optimistic. Get those videos for me. Ted asks me to get the tapes from the tennis court and the recordings of Sue with Mr. Davis and Mr. Evans in her office. I hand him the videos, and he tells me to invite Mary to lunch with me. I look at him strangely, and he immediately responds to me in the best way. I think if I watch them personally, it would be better not to bother you before the 2 p.m. meeting. I don't think watching this material will make you feel good right now, and I don't want you to get angry before we meet Bill Evans. I know he's right, and I thank him. Then tell Mary the good news. She tells me to take her to an expensive place if Ted is paying. I laugh, and we both leave the building. Mary is a fantastic dinner companion and makes me forget all the issues for the next hour. When we return, I hear Ted cheering as we enter the office. We walk in, and he's in a great mood, celebrating like on an anniversary trip. This recording is amazing, Bobby. I can't believe this, he tells me. I look surprised and saddened, and I think he finally understands why. Oh, Bobby, I'm truly sorry. I'm not happy about these videos. I know Sue really hurt you. I'm just excited about what I've just found, he confesses to me. Bobby, come here. I need you to look at something for me. Ted requests me as I follow his instructions and stand right behind him to be able to look over his shoulder. Have you watched the entire tape that Tony recorded at the tennis club with Sue? He asks me. No, I only glanced through some portions last night. I tried to watch the entire scene without vomiting or going out to kill someone. I honestly tell him. I have a surprise for you. Just before Tony and Sue finished, they started attracting a small group in the men's locker room at the tennis club. I don't want to say this, but she let other men watch her have sex after Tony was done. I'm not saying this to make you angry or sad, but for this man here, Ted tells me, pointing at the screen on his desk. The man he's referring to is an older man, wearing a long towel, long gray hair, and a sea captain-style beard. He asks me if I recognize him. Ted puts the tape in, and I can see him dropping the towel, revealing a well-endowed man that all men would be proud of. The only issue is he goes straight to my wife and fucks her. The next minute, she's surrounded by 5 other guys waiting their turn to chat with Sue. Ted, I don't know this guy's name, but I think he knows. I cleverly reply to him. Bobby, this is to prepare for our meeting at the tennis club at 4 p.m. Now watch, he says happily, and then he tells me the reason. I smile as he talks about his plan. In addition to being my friend, Tad is also an excellent lawyer. I'm glad he's standing by me this time. We leave the office to go downtown for the 2 p.m. meeting with Bill Evans. We bring a portable DVD player, some pictures printed before leaving, and some legal envelopes. We enter Sue's building and go straight to Bill's office on the top floor. Sue's office is downstairs. We wait in the waiting area until invited into Mr. Evans' office. Just before I step in, I feel someone looking at me. I glance down the hallway and see the woman disappearing around the corner. When she notices me looking at her, I wonder if she can guess who I am. I'm just glad I don't have to face her today. We both enter Bill's office, furnished with expensive furniture at every spot. On the wall, there are only plaques, awards, or photos of a famous person alongside Bill Evans. He has a beautiful office, and the first thought that comes to my mind is whether he brought Sue into that room. Thinking about this, I genuinely start to dislike Mr. Evans more than ever. I introduce Ted and start talking. "Hello, Mr. Evans. This is my friend, Ted Worth, and he will be participating in the meeting you called today," I say to Bill as we all shake hands. "Mr. Thomas Bob, I think this meeting will be a small one taking place behind closed doors between you and me," Mr. Evans asks me. "No problem at all. Actually, I think it would be good if Jeff Davis also joined this meeting. I don't know if that's possible, but it applies to him as well," I tell Mr. Evans. Mr. Evans thinks for a moment and presses the intercom button. "Julie, tell Jeff he needs to come to my office immediately. Tell him to stop everything and come here right now." "Okay. Jeff will be here in a few minutes. Meanwhile, let me just say that I'm really sorry for all the trouble that Jeff and Sue have caused in your life. I know last night must have been a difficult night, but if we work together on this issue, maybe we can help everyone involved," Bill says optimistically. What does Mr. Evans want to say? I ask him, waiting for Jeff to arrive. I really like Mr. Thomas's wife, Sue, and Bill wants to say this but gets interrupted when Jeff walks through the door. He stops and looks like he's about to turn around and leave, but Bill orders him to sit down. He sits down unenthusiastically and doesn't look at me at all. "Bob, I just want to say that I really like Sue, almost like a daughter," he begins as Ted interrupts. "Do you mean you like incest, Mr. Evans?" Ted asks, completely catching him off guard. I start chuckling inwardly because I know what Ted is talking about. He's saying he likes incest. What the hell? He asks Ted with justified disgust. "Yes, let me show you. As they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words," Ted says, placing the DVD player on Bill's desk. "These are images from the video that you will see in just a minute." Ted hands them to Jeff, not Bill. Jeff's eyes widen like saucers, and he slowly moves them straight to Bill. The pictures show Bill and Jeff together with my wife, and there's no doubt about who is in the pictures or what they are doing. I even think Bill recognizes the desk they used for sexual relations with Sue. "Jeff, do you want to tell me that you were foolish enough to record this and even make copies?" Bill asks, almost at a loss for words. Clearly, Jeff has no answer at this moment and remains completely speechless. "Yes, Mr. Evans, this is how it's going to play out. Oh, by the way, I'm a lawyer and also Bobby's friend, so let me tell you what we want and how we want you to handle it," Ted tells the surprised crowd. "I like every bit of it. First, Sue will keep her job. End of discussion. Bobby feels she will need a job, and she seems to get along very well with everyone here," he tells Bill with a slight wink. "Second, Mr. Davis is no longer welcome here. End of discussion. Sue stays, and he leaves," Tad tells Bill, pointing directly at the rigid Jeff. "Third, we want you to make a financial offer that doesn't insult our intelligence. We'll only consider your initial offer and respond with a yes or no within 5 business days. We plan to go to court before the end of 2 months, and it might be sooner if necessary," Ted says before they could say anything. Ted presses the play button and rotates the screen for Bill to see. It displays both men asserting their ownership over my wife in their respective boardrooms. Jeff doesn't need to watch because he's the one managing the video recording. Bill just watches with his mouth wide open. I can see the gears in his head working extremely hard. He's thinking about how to preserve his business, reputation, family life, and most importantly, his money. I know something is going to happen soon. Jeff, when these bosses leave today, we'll have a very serious conversation about your future employment. I will talk to my lawyer and see if we can negotiate a figure that would make both parties somewhat happy. Both brothers understand that this could be very bad for business if it becomes widespread before my proposal is considered, Bill declares, deep in thought. Don't worry, Mr. Evans. We will keep your secret until we see your serious offer. However, I shouldn't rush to fire Mr. Davis right now. He might keep some copies of this recording and use it as a bargaining tool if we don't. You and Mr. Davis can discuss this, or you can discuss it with Mr. Davis. Oh, and I should add, both of you might also face imprisonment for engaging in sexual relations with an employee, directly affecting your employment and promotions. Ted says as we stand up to leave. Ted retrieves the portable DVD player and the images we brought with us. We leave the room as Bill and Jeff are about to have a little chat. I approach Ted to ask him about something, but he tells me to keep quiet until we leave the building. I don't realize that my wife is standing around the corner trying to eavesdrop on our conversation. But he does. The last thing I hear is Mr. Evans yelling into Julie's intercom, "Bring Sue Thomas here immediately." I smile because I know the meeting is going to be very interesting. Bill will soon find out that I found his DVD in my house. As we exit the building, I ask Ted why he set up Jeff by suggesting he use his recording against Bill. Divide and conquer, as they often say. It's better if they don't act as a united front, but rather as individuals. If Bill comes up with a comfortable offer for us, we'll start turning against each other. I also know Jeff and Bill have families and attend church, though you wouldn't know this from the videos they recorded. They don't want to stir up trouble in their families right now, Ted says wisely as we leave the building. I realize that now this would be the place where my wife deceived me instead of being proud of her job. I felt saddened by this thought, much like many other thoughts in my head. Ted brought me back to reality. Okay, let's grab a beer before the next meeting at 4 p.m. at the tennis club. Now both of us need something to relieve stress, and I also want to ask you something, but I'm not sure how to bring it up. Body, Ted said to me as we drove through the city to the tennis club. We stopped by a cute little bar right next to the tennis club. Ted ordered 2 beers and started talking. Body, I think Bill Evans will make an offer, but only with an amount less than $1 million. I know his legal team from another firm, and they are very competent. The main character is also a practical person. I'll call him tomorrow and inform him that a low offer is not good for his business or family life. I'll suggest around $3 million or simply dropping it all, Ted continued. Then, I need to know if the offer is not accepted, which could happen, whether I can drag Susan through the mud. I won't compromise on anything, no matter what, if it doesn't help win the case. This could get ugly and very public. I'll use every available tool to win our case. Maybe you don't like all the details that could become public about Sue, your marriage, and possibly your sex life. I'll make her look like a fallen woman. Have you thought about this, Ted? Ted added at the last minute. Seems like you've thought about this. I'm much more mature than people think. If this needs to be done, you have my approval. But I want to try the diplomatic route by proposing it to Bill before we go crazy. I suggested it to Tad already. I expressed my opinion. First, let's see what Bill proposes, though if it's too bad, I'll complete all the necessary paperwork on that day. I'll also use my connections in the media as well as friends at the 3 local TV stations. They'll be delighted to have some video clips or pictures. Even have a censor bar in front of the appealing parts, as they often say in comedy shows. Ted, you always stand by me, and I trust your decision. I just wish all this mess had never happened. Being an oblivious husband is more interesting than having to endure public exposure when your wife deceives you. He is still allowed to do whatever is necessary, because, in the end, I didn't start this mess, but I'll finish it soon, I told him with a tone of anger. Okay, Bobby, no problem at all. Now let's discuss the materials for our next meeting. This person, Mr. Harry Riddell, is the owner of the Ace Tennis Club. This is the person I pointed out in the video in my office, Ted said. He says adults will be adults, and he can't do anything for us. Even Tony's tennis coach might be fired just for show. Then he can rehire him next week. I checked, and Tony is very popular there, especially with women, if you know what I mean. He might rehire him to maintain the club's image. But remember, Bobby, most men pay the club fees, and women just attend. Don't forget this because it will be important for your communication with Mr. Riddell, Ted explained. He recounted in detail how everything unfolded, and we arrived right on time. It could be seen that Mr. Riddell and Ted didn't like each other, evident from the first words Riddell spoke. Okay, Worth, you've summoned the meeting, so wrap it up. I want it to end as quickly as possible, Mr. Riddell said to Ted without any courtesy. Mr. Riddell, this is Bob Thomas, he said, nodding in my direction, and his wife is a member of your club. We've learned that Tony Simba, your tennis coach, has had a relationship with Mr. Thomas's wife. We want to know what you plan to do about this. Ted concluded and waited for Riddell to speak, but even I knew he would take charge of everything, and in just a few words would push Ted to hell. Whatever two adults do in their privacy and spare time is their business. I'm not their mother, so don't waste my time, Harry Riddell said to us with no kindness. As for you, Mr. Thomas, if you can't make your wife happy in the bedroom, don't come to me crying and blaming me if she makes you pitiable by deceiving her. Many unhappy wives come to Ace Tennis Club. Some still return because of the personal service my staff provides them. If you know what I mean, Harry said, winking at me. I wanted to raise my hand and hit him, but Ted held my wrist tightly and whispered to me to stay calm and follow his lead. You see, Harry, you're assuming that this happens outside the club and that it happens without full understanding and approval from the owner. That's your mistake in assuming that, Harry, Ted said, pulling out a DVD player and placing it on his desk. Ted pressed play and turned the screen toward Harry. This was a hint that Harry was throwing the gauntlet, and he was beginning to acknowledge the incident with my wife. Clearly, he didn't like the look of the video clip. Ted began speaking before Harry had a chance to think. Harry, with full understanding of this, and with the involvement of working colleagues, you've utilized the services of a paying member of the club, Mrs. Susan Thomas, a married woman, even receiving fees from Mr. Thomas, and now he is an unsatisfied customer, Thad said to Mr. Riddell very calmly. As this became evident, all the men, particularly those who were paying members, wanted to know if their wives were engaging in sexual activities here, given they also had to pay. I will have to summon all those who were in the changing room that day. I'm not sure they, the married ones, will be pleased with you about this, Thad began narrating in a manner almost like a fairy tale. I also almost forgot about reasonable expectations of privacy even when filming in the changing room initially, Harry. When I'm done with you, your club won't be the beacon of the community it once was, and I also think your banking privileges will be a bit lighter in the near future, Ted added to drive his point home strongly. So what we want is for you to make a serious offer and call me immediately. If you do this promptly, you can save yourself a lot of trouble and financial loss, Ted finally concluded. We could see Harry Riddell contemplating his options. Ted, as usual, he's always a shrewd opportunist, but I couldn't argue with his logic. I'll call him tomorrow with my proposal. If I settle the full amount, all the recordings will come back to me and never see the light of day. I'll voluntarily fire Tony. Now, if it's just what you, the legal threats, want, then don't bother anymore, Harry Riddell said to us as Ted picked up the DVD player with a smile and turned it off. Oh, by the way, say hello to Tito Martinez from me, Ted said to Harry as we left the room. Go to hell, you penny pincher, that's all Harry could say in response. Ted laughed all the way to the parking lot. "It's really amusing," Ted said to me. "So now, we're waiting for the proposal," Ted said to me as we headed to his house to enjoy a delicious homemade meal. By the end of the week, Bill Evans had proposed an offer of nearly $2.7 million to keep Sue as his employee. Jeff Davis had been fired after foolishly handing over the entire video to Bill Evans, and there was nothing left to retain. Bill simply fired him, and poor old Jeff could do nothing. I pursued the two fools who were with my wife the night I caught her with Jeff. They were two big clients of Jeff, but both didn't want any attention, either from a business or personal perspective. So each of them offered me $1 million to walk away. Harry Raydell didn't want to propose anything and said we could sue him. We did so, and he lost $3 million when we were done with him. He had too many questions about who was sleeping with whom at the club, to the point of losing half of the members and having to give up everyone else. I think he thought he could escape this situation, but the judge didn't like the scene in the private changing room, and he also didn't like it when people messed with other people's wives. I gifted Sue a house and a car as she wanted, although I didn't have to pay a dime for her and supported the child. I only met her twice in court. Each time I greeted her, I called her a whore, and that made her cry. I always wondered why she cried now, not before she started this whole mess in my life, the worst period of my life. I have more money than ever, I'm smarter, and I follow Ted's advice. But it still hurts, and I still carry it with me to this day. All the events of that awful year appear in the blink of an eye. I didn't even notice anyone talking to me until I woke up from the flashback nightmare and heard the restaurant manager asking if he could help with something. I'm not sure how long I stood there in silent contemplation of the past. I shook my head to clear the thoughts and returned to the restaurant. "Sorry, I was just thinking about an issue," I said as I realized I was standing there motionless. "I'm not sure how long you've been standing there, but I recall the past." I shook my head to dispel the thoughts and returned to the restaurant. "Sorry, I was just thinking about an issue." Once again, I found myself at the party that I attended to visit. "So, thank you once again." I told the manager about it as he looked at me with a strange look, the kind people usually give to an elderly person with specific intentions at home. I went straight to the table of my ex-wife. I thought surprise beat her first, as when I finally married Susan, I was overweight with long, bushy hair. I let myself be comfortable with aching knees from an old baseball injury. That's what I told myself at the time. But in reality, I was just getting used to my life and my wife. Now my hair is cut short, my body is lean from daily workouts, and my knees have been fixed thanks to the money I received from Jeff and Bill's company. My suit is now expensive, and I always try to look good whenever I appear in public. I decided to speak first. "You look great today, bitch. I almost forgot how good you look," I said, attempting to provoke her. I still knew how to exploit her weaknesses, and I deliberately did so. "My name is Susan, body. Why don't you call me by my name?" she replied with anger. "Hey, I didn't say your name is a bitch. Do you know who told me that? I just thought it was fitting. I told you 3 years ago that you broke my heart, and I will always call you by that name," I said to her as the man next to her began to object and stood up from his seat. Sue pushed him back and told him not to create a scene. She cried a little, and her makeup smeared. Her boyfriend said, "Fix your makeup again, Sue, and tidy up your beautiful face. I'll take care of this guy." And with those words, she stood up, looked straight into my eyes, and I looked back at her with just a glance. I must have displayed all the pain I've been carrying inside for the past 3 years. She cried again, even more. I was surprised that she still had emotions for me, or perhaps she still felt guilty. I thought it was a combination of both. "You better leave when you come back," she told me with tears streaming down her face. I only noticed the large engagement ring on her ring finger when she wiped away tears with her hand and walked into the restroom. "Are you Bob Thomas, Sue's ex-husband?" he asked me with disgust in his tone. "Yeah, And you're probably the new dream of that bitch, I said about him when I saw anger appear on his face. I'm Sue's CFO, and if I were you, I'd stop calling her that. He tried to speak strongly, but I could see he really didn't want to create a scene. I'm doing this to talk to you alone. I have 3 questions for you, and after that, I will disappear from your life forever. I told you about it, and saw that you seemed to have many questions. I've been in your position once, and I just don't want anyone else to endure a fate like mine again. I guess the bitch told you that I'm a terrible husband, beating her or abandoning her, or being a skirt chaser. I asked you about that, and found that's exactly what she told you. Well, I didn't come here to defend my reputation to you. Honestly, I don't think anything good will come of that. I just want to know beforehand if Sarah will continue hosting Avon parties at her house on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I asked you about that. Sue helps Sarah sell decorations at parties on Mondays and Wednesdays. It just makes you know how much you remember. He hesitated. Okay. So does Sarah continue playing tennis every Saturday? I asked quickly. Sue plays tennis every Sunday, he pointed out. So you remember so vividly since living with her, he said with joy in his voice. Yeah, one last question. Have you ever looked under the last drawer of the cabinet in the living room? I asked quickly. Why in the world should I do that? He objected. The 3 questions I asked you are the reason we're not together anymore. I still keep all the materials from the divorce in my office, legal documents, emails from Sarah and the bitch, along with hours of video recordings. I've always carried it with me for the past 3 years, so I think you should have it. I said this, pulling out a very old and folded piece of paper from my wallet. This is what the bitch wrote to Sarah when she asked how to get rid of me before I found out she was cheating on me. I don't know exactly what she wrote after reading that letter, and maybe I still don't know until now. But it all revolves around you, I said and handed him the paper. However, I knew Sue very well, and knew that she had a habit of binding herself to certain actions. She always did it the same way every time, sometimes driving me crazy. I also felt that just because she had a new man, she would still do the things she always did. He seemed hesitant to take the paper, but I think curiosity defeated him. He reached out and opened the email. I've carried it with me for 3 years and have been busy reviewing it, trying to improve my life so that no woman will write such things about me again. Of all the recordings and other things I've learned from this email, perhaps it has had the most profound impact on me. That's why I still keep it with me. This is the email that I described earlier in my story. Peter reads the letter slowly and places it on the table. He takes out a pen, writes a quick note, and to my surprise, leaves the restaurant without turning back, without thanking me, without anything. His face is completely cold. I lean over and look at what he wrote in the old email. I'll be back home in a moment. Stay here, and I'll call you back in 15 minutes. Wait for me here. For some strange reason, I need to look under the last drawer of the living room cabinet. Be right back, Peter. I know he saw the light, even if he might not like it. Something tells me that I've come too close to the breaking point with all 3 issues. The email is the final straw, and I think he needs to see it with his own eyes. I leave a note before heading to Sue's table and leave. There's no way I'm sitting in the restaurant with anyone tonight. I go back to the reception and call my clients. They say they're running late and won't mind if we reschedule the meeting. Right before I leave, I look back at the dining table. Sue returns to the table and looks around to find Peter. She sits down and looks at the old email and Peter's note. Her face turns pale as a ghost when she realizes the content of the old email and what Peter wrote to her. The last time I see my ex-wife, she is crying so hard that the whole restaurant turns to look at her. I genuinely feel sorry for her, but at the same time, I don't care. It's the last time I see her. I still wonder if Peter found something under the drawer. Sue's crying tells me that he might have.